Hi, Dr. Thomas. I'm going to bump you over to panelist. Hi, Dr. T. I'm going to bump you over to panelist. All right.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm a little new to the technology, and I have it on.
You're looking good.
I had a question. Maybe you can help me. So I have it on my phone as opposed to a laptop. Mm-hmm. Is there a way? And I know by swiping I can see who's on the meeting. But is there a way I could have access like they have on TV with like all the faces or all the people?
Mm-hmm.
How would I?
So in the right hand, I don't know how it looks on the phone, but on my laptop, in the right hand corner, okay, up at the top, it says gallery view or speaker view. You want to click on gallery view, okay, and then you can see everybody that's on it.
So I'm.
Okay, welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our 11th episode of CRED Talks. We're in a state of emergency in the U.S., and we are equally in a state of emergency in Chicago and in our own communities. Today, we will look at the mental impact of the coronavirus, coupled with outrage for the injustice and police brutality against our Black brothers and sisters, compounded with the overt, blatant, and systematic racism that has been endured daily for far too long, and for some, add to that the feelings of fear, hopelessness, and being unseen. How African Americans have the strength to even open our eyes, and endure it all again every day is beyond comprehension. Today, we will talk to a panel of our CRED in-house experts about the heart, mind, and soul of the Black man, the Black woman, and the Black child in today's America. Allow me to introduce our panel of experts, Dr. Donald Tyler with CRED, Necole Muhammad, therapist with CRED Women, Coach TJ Crawford, therapist with Roseland and MAAFA, and Dr. Lynelle Thomas, pediatric physician with I Am Able. I'm anxious to begin this conversation, but first, check this out. We're gonna wait for Monica to go to our video I want you to look at.
It's coming right up. I apologize, 1 second. All right.
On June 12th, the Washington Post published an article entitled "Depression and Anxiety Spiked Among Black Americans After George Floyd's Death. Asians and African Americans show sharp increases in mental health problems amid protests, while white Americans were relatively untouched." The census reported within a week of the Floyd murder, anxiety and depression among African Americans shot to higher rates than experienced by any other racial or ethnic group, with 41% screening positive for at least one or more symptoms. A recent NBC segment spotlighted, along with COVID, racial trauma takes an extra mental toll on African Americans. Dr. Dana Crawford, a psychologist in New York City, has seen an increase in African American patients and appointments. Here's what she's seen.
New York's Erica Byfield spoke with a psychologist on the mental stress of the burden of racism and how to cope.
I think coupled with the fatigue of COVID, racialized trauma has just escalated to a higher level.
The U.S. on edge as Americans, especially African Americans, try to process George Floyd's death.
So what I see playing out right now are people who are attempting to have some voice heard.
Dr. Dana Crawford is a Manhattan psychologist who specializes in racial trauma. She called these demonstrations of empowerment, anger, sadness, fear, depression, the result of tensions that have been simmering for decades.
I've seen and experienced a lot of patients, a lot of clients reaching out and saying, you know what, I'm no longer going to put my trauma in a box. I deserve better. I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to process it.
Black children are having to understand and confront lessons of racism at a very early age. Black children have had to be resilient, while other children can be silly and precocious. African Americans, and especially residents of Chicago, must endure multiple and compounded layers of stress and trauma that lead to depression and anxiety, that lead to increased levels of addiction and suicide.
God! Come on, really? I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm hurt.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, is a very sad but very real reality for many in Chicago's African American communities.
It's closer to the problem, if that makes sense.
And your story certainly involves a lot of trauma. You witnessed a murder in Auburn Gresham at 11. At 15, you were shot 21 times, and you spent years physically recovering. You say the goal is to fix you, but not heal you. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yes, I think that people don't understand that the mental trauma, it's like, with me going through that, the biggest thing was fixing my physical trauma, trying to get back on my feet, trying to teach myself how to walk again, eat again, move again. But I never really sat down and attacked like my mental state. You know, it's a psychological trauma I was going through, you know, and that's what most of us do. We just keep going and keep going along, but it's really tough on the brain.
Black women experience added trauma. Somehow their stories get lost in the protests.
Unfortunately, what exists in our society right now that we're fighting against, and why the movement for Say Her Name is so paramount, is that, just as you've said, the names of Black men who have been killed by police are on the lips and tongues of pretty much everyone, because that is the name, those are the names that are elevated and amplified, where the names of our daughters and what Black women who've been killed by police, there has been suppression, and not only suppression, but also the complete, they're ignored and erased, because unfortunately we are still contending with, and I'm gonna call it the patriarchy that exists in this society, where women have no place, not in life nor in death.
Between COVID-19's disproportionate impact on Black Americans, police brutality, outrage, violence and killing in our own communities, and now that the issue of racism has reemerged to the forefront in America, the last few months have brought significant challenges for African Americans. Some people have never experienced this. Even though we are Black people, these are things that are opening all of our eyes, and some of us need to know how to deal with it. Let's talk about it on today's CRED Talks.
So just so you know, the video, I'm going to send that out to you guys. We had some technical difficulties. It was actually a video that goes all the way through. We'll see that. We'll see that later. But that is a lot. And when you see it, it's a lot to the video. And so let's get into it. Earlier this week, we gave our in-house therapists a link to 3 separate surveys, one for Black men, one for Black women, and one for Black children, preteens and teens. Though they were 3 separate surveys, the questions polled were similar. And what I found from Black men was when asked the question, what best describes how you are coping with COVID-19, the virus and quarantine. The majority answered they feel hopeless, like there will be no cure. When they were asked to choose one word that describes how they feel as a Black man in America, the majority chose targeted. When asked one word that describes their feelings for police officers, the majority of Black men said angry. The one thing that stood out with the men, the Black men on the survey, was when they were asked to give one of their own words to describe how hate crimes and racism makes them feel. One of the surveyors said, powerless, powerless. The Black women got the same survey, and like the men, coronavirus has the majority of them feeling hopeless. When they were asked how they feel as a Black woman in America, the majority of the women chose overlooked as their answer. That was interesting to me. Their feelings toward the police officers were also angry, and hate crimes and racism made Black women, the majority of them, feel angry. And then with the Black children, of course, this is no surprise when asked how they were coping with the coronavirus and quarantine, the majority said that they were ready for it to be over and get out of the house. I could have predicted that one. But the one word that the majority of the children selected on the survey that was interesting was when asked their feelings for police officers, and the word that the majority of them chose was distrust. And these are children that already have feelings of not feeling safe or protected. And those feelings are kind of there already. So what was also interesting to me was that their answer for how hate crimes made them feel, and they said hopeless. Children, the word they selected was hopeless. There were two questions that got unanimity across the three groups, and that was if they had experienced racism and if they believed systematic racism was real. And everyone had experienced racism and believed systematic racism was real. And so that's a lot to process, I know. But let's try to unpack it together. I will start. Dr. T, I will ask you the first question. Hate crimes and racism makes a grown Black man, probably a father, feel powerless. Why do you think he feels powerless? Don't answer that yet, not yet. Ms. Muhammad, you will follow Dr. T with the same line of questioning, but if you could break down the feelings of feeling overlooked as a Black woman in today's America, why? And so I'll start with Dr. T. Dr. T, again, the question was, hate crimes makes a grown Black man say that he feels powerless. Why do you think a Black man feels powerless today?
Sure. You know, individually, as well as a community, we've experienced so much adversity, right? And when I say community, we gotta think about African Americans in historical context, right? So we talking about 400 years, right? So the first Africans were taken by force from the continent of Africa and brought to North America in 1619, right? 400 years, right? So of all manner and all type of trauma, right? So some of the most violent ways in which human beings can treat each other, we've been subjected to as a larger community, right? All the way up to today, right? And so in our communities on the south and west side of Chicago, you've got all manner of chronic stressor, all types of traumatic events. You know, we're dealing with COVID-19 right now. We're dealing with, this escalation in violence that's occurring in our communities. You know, we're still struggling with poverty, trying to make ends meet. We still lack jobs. We still lack adequate health care. We still have substandard schools, right? So almost any type of problem you can name, we've experienced, right? You know, we've got ongoing oppression and violence from the police, for example, right? We got ongoing marginalization of these communities, right? Disinvestment in terms of resources. So when you talk about an individual person who've experienced adversity after adversity after adversity, it's natural to have moments when you feel powerless. But please, this is what's most important, right? Powerlessness, typically we feel that when we feel isolated or alone, when we don't feel connected to other people, right? So our power, our strength comes from us being together collectively, supporting each other, caring for each other, working together to resolve our problems, right? So when you see all of the marching, all the protests, right? That's people coming together collectively to move and operate against the problems that we have, right? The more that we can be together and operate as one collective, right, then the less we'll feel powerless as an individual person. Our power is in us working together. Our ability to be resilient in the face of all these overwhelming odds comes from us moving and operating together as a unit to collectively work against our difficulties. That's where our power lies.
Thank you, Dr. T. Thank you. Ms. Muhammad, why do you think Black women are feeling overlooked?
Well, there's a variety of reasons that I believe Black women feel overlooked. If I can borrow some of Dr. T's, because we walk a very parallel journey, the Black man and the Black woman. And innately, Black women have always supported and led and been the foundation for the family. And it's almost as if this shifting that has to occur with how you're supposed to respond or be in a certain situation puts you at a disadvantage in reference to certain things that should be exposed. So let me give you an example. You have to almost be disobedient and aggressive now in order to be seen as a Black woman. Because if you come in the light of which your natural nature is, then you could be overlooked as being someone who is out of place, aggressive, lacking judgment, having mental issues, so forth and so on. And so there's so many different components to the areas in which we're overlooked. So in reference to the example that was in the PowerPoint that we saw earlier, and we were talking about the amount of women who have been killed, there are over 65,000 women, Black women missing. That is not at the forefront. Right now, we have approximately about 20 women this year who have been killed in reference to gun violence. We have a large amount of women in our community who are suffering from PTSD for a variety of issues. And so, and even if you even go on a political level, even though there are many women this year celebrating the 100th year of the women's suffrage movement, and that was predominantly white women who were able to secure that 19th Amendment right to vote. Black women didn't really get that opportunity until 1965 on a large majority, even after everybody else with the Voting Rights Act came along. So not certain why we are overlooked. Those are all individual situations, but the unfortunate part is that we have to act out of character and or insert ourselves and or go above and beyond and do things in order to receive our due. Black women are highly intelligent, very intuitive, have always been the backbone of the African American community. And I would say on a strengths-based level, that what I strive to help the women in our program understand is that yes, we will be overlooked, but that is not the path in which we will, stay. Like we move forward regardless, and we stand firm in how we were created and what we can do.
Thank you. Thank you. I will say, I'll add to that recently, in recent times, I have done away with caring whether I am perceived as the angry Black woman or not, because that's the thing. We're labeled the angry Black woman. Call me that, okay? I'm the angry Black woman now. Yeah. So I think if, we can move past that now. The third question I'm gonna toss to Dr. Thomas. Dr. Thomas, talk to us a little about what makes a child, preteen, even a teen, already feel that they cannot trust the police. Can that perception of the police officer change? And if so, how?
Hi, there I go. Hello, everyone. Those of you that know me know that I work with children of all ages, meaning adults as well. And I tend to look at things pretty simply. And simple meaning the science and the truth about our biology and who we are as human beings. And that's actually what keeps me hopeful. If you let me for just a second tell you the story that I remember about my first contact with police on the south side of Chicago in the 7th grade, going to a party. And my father had bought a Cadillac Eldorado, and myself and 2 of my girlfriends, again, 7th grade, we must have been 11 or 12, dressed up for a party in the back seat, and my father driving a really shiny, nice white car, and we got pulled over. I remember they made my father get out of the car and, spread eagle, and they patted him down, and I was crying. I don't even know if the police officer was Black or white, but, and I guess I found out later that, maybe they thought he was a pimp and that we were prostitutes dressed in our little outfits with, our hair picked out and jewelry on. And that was my first contact with the police. I grew up in the generation where we also had officer friendly coming to the schools for whatever part of society had also put this in place to have children have, collegial relationships with police, have the police come in, be friendly, talk about neighborhoods and caring. And so that was my first contact. To this day, I still get hairs on the back of my neck when I see a state trooper go by or police officer. So that was my first contact. What mediated that? What is it? Do I trust police? The complicated question. Trust is, and mistrust and thinking of self and other is adaptive, I would say. So my answer is, from the time when we were very young as human beings in Africa, infants, children know how to determine, okay, safe here, mommy, caretaker, daddy, other, mistrust. And it's adaptive for all of us to learn who we can trust and we cannot trust. I mean, it's hardwired into our brains, period. It's adaptive, it can save our life. When it goes awry is when that adaptive part becomes generalized. And then we mistrust, we have an experience that's not moderated by some adult caretaker helping us understand why we're afraid. And that can actually become a burden and affect our ability to have relationships and to walk through the world without being afraid every second, every moment of the day that something bad is going to happen or that police officer is going to get us. But so all that in summary is that mistrust is smart, it's adaptive, but it needs to be modulated and moderated by intelligent adults, by information, and then allowing us to have choices, if that makes sense. So it's all about our relationships, the adults around us, how they mediate and help us understand experiences like what happened to me. Being cautious is it's a good thing. It's a smart thing, but it takes adults to help children know how to modulate, dial up and down those natural reactive fears that they might have. Because sometimes it might save their life and other times it might deprive them of an opportunity, a relationship, and access to all that the world has to offer for all of us.
Thank you. Do you think, as a follow-up to that, as parents and guardians, do we need to be, it's tough, but do we need to be unpacking what they're seeing on social media, what they're seeing on the news, with the police and how we're responding to police, how police are responding to us? It's a tough conversation, but do we need to be having those conversations with our children? And then to that, what age is a good age to start?
Perfect question. I have to say that, you know, I work with lots of mental health professionals, and I have parents and grandparents of all ages and races asking me this. An older Jewish woman from New York said her 6-year-old grandson asked her, what happened with that man in the neck? So everyone is wondering. The answer is yes, yes, yes. The answer is ideally you don't wait. You would have conversations about the world before the problem happens, but it's not too late. I would also emphasize to parents, do not try to hide your natural emotions. And not just the men, but the women, we try to, you know, stay strong and not show fear, but it's human to be afraid, to be angry. Anger is a human, biologically hardwired emotion. So don't hide it. Hate is not hardwired, but anger, emotion, fearfulness, sadness, hopelessness, those are all, please give yourself permission to feel that and not to hide it from your kids. And then they won't try to hide their emotions from you. They won't try to protect you, because lots of times kids know this is tough times. I can't talk to my mom because she's already not sure if she's going to get a job, and we can't get milk and bread. So children, give yourself permission to be human. Give your children a chance to show their emotional reactions, and then talk about it together in simple language, honest language. If you don't know something, say, I don't know, let's find out. And the conversations should start as early as you can communicate, even non-verbally. Kids are sponges. If they might not be able to express the words, but they are sucking up whatever you're feeling and whatever's going on in the media. So it's really important to figure out a way to have a conversation. Even if you're afraid or uncomfortable, get somebody else to come help you. But that's what's going to mediate and protect your kids and make them resilient against whatever comes their way, whether it's the police, whether it's social media, whether it's bullying. The relationship, just like Dr. T said, it's all about relationships. And I know that sounds simple, but that is the beautiful truth. Relationships are our hope, especially for children.
Thank you. Thank you. Coach Crawford, how would you instruct one of your guys, our participant, to process his anger for the police, anger for being hated, anger for being targeted, anger for being profiled?
So first off, just how do you process anger, period, right? So, you know, how do you, what is your anger directed towards? What is it telling you about? You know, what is the situation, circumstance that has created the anger, and is that anger justified? And then how do you go about correcting that situation, right? How do you, one, not allow your emotion to put you in a situation where you're going to do something that doesn't, you know, really serve your best interest in the short term and the long term? How do you process your anger or your emotion in a way that doesn't compromise your values that you have as a person, the principles that you have as a person, as a thing that won't compromise that which is most important to you, your priorities, be it the people, the places, and things that you care about and are considered or that you consider as you move about your everyday. That's how I deal with anger, period. What are the consequences of the actions that I'm going to take if I choose to act in response to a situation? Is that driven strictly by my anger? Is my anger going to make me be irrational? Is it going to make me blow past things that I normally would not do if I was not angry, if I was not enraged and moving in a way that is really just about the moment, but not about my moments in the future and what it is that I choose to see happen in my life? So that's how I process anger in particular. When I'm dealing with the police and angry at the police, when the police come on set, you know, as a Black man, they come through with all of the power and authority of the law, right? And up until this point, throughout, you know, historically, they've been able to execute that power, you know, in real life and in real time, with little to no consequence. And depending on who's in the space that I find myself in with the police, I think, you know, if Dr. T talked about earlier about being in community and being with others, if there are more people around than the police who are willing to act justly, then you have not necessarily more leeway, but there's more eyes and more people paying attention to what's going on, so that you can deal in that moment in a way that's going to serve you best. But for the most part, when dealing with the police, I have had to understand, and I would like for my guys to understand that if you're being disrespected or treated unfairly or in an unjust way, you got to be prepared to work through the process in order to get justice. You're not going to probably, the chances of you getting justice in that moment are like 0 to none, right? So your most important thing is, how do I get to the next moment, the next day? How do I maintain all those things that I just got through talking about, my values, my principles, and priorities? How do I make sure that my interaction with the police is not going to be something that takes me away from that, right? And then how do I know how to best engage police? Because oftentimes we forget that police are people too, right? And even though their actions might not be correct, even though they might do some things that we think that because they're the police, they should only act this way, they are human. They got issues. They got things that they need to get in check as well. So knowing that, you want to approach them in a way where you recognize their humanity and you give them the room to express, not to do you wrong, but you want to not do things that's going to send this person off who unfortunately has more power over you in the moment, right? So remember all of that as you engage the police and speak to them in a way that's not going to send them off, that's not going to escalate the situation. First and foremost, I want to make sure that as I move around in these streets, knowing that I'm targeted. You asked about being targeted. Knowing that the Black man and Black people in general are targeted when we move around, I need to make sure that I got all my stuff in order as much as I possibly can, because I know, unfortunately, when I walk these streets, that somebody, when they sees me, they're not going to be looking to really keep me in a safe space. Oftentimes, they're looking to see how they can get their quota up or meet whatever it is that they got to get done, or if I fit a description, they want to see if I got something on me so that they have an excuse to take me in or detain me versus allowing me or helping me to get to where it is that I want to go. So how do I minimize, the excuses or try to cut back on the reasons for a police officer to even have to engage me? And when they do engage me, how do I make sure that I'm, following the law? Because they're supposed to be enforcers of the law. How do I make sure that I'm in tune with the law in a way where I can keep moving, right? Also, I need to know the law. I need to know what the officer's rights are when they engage me. I need to know what my rights are when I engage them. I need to know how far they really can go, how far I can really go as I begin to question or push back around the things that I might not feel is right in the moment. But always when dealing with the police, I want my guys to remember that, getting your justice and getting out of the situation is first and foremost, the most important thing. And the way to correct whatever you may have engaged or interacted with the police, however you felt, that's not something that's going to happen in the moment. That's something that you're going to have to work through a process in, right? And we need to be patient and adamant as we work through process. Don't accept injustice and don't accept any nonsense, but also understand that on the streets, that's not the time where you're going to be able to get what it is that you want, because you're already at a disadvantage just by the way that the laws are set up and just by the prejudice and the perspective that a lot of police officers bring to the situation. And I would probably say this also, though, as a person who's an advocate and actively involved in my community, I understand to a certain extent the systems that operate and that are there to police us, right? So if I know the system, and I also know the players in the system and the positions in the system, you all just got through talking about developing relationship. I want to make sure I got a relationship with the system and with the people in the places who operate within that, so that I know I can call some names. I can, have some folks who are on speed dial. I can speak to some things that makes them say, oh, hold up, Shorty knows something. I have a relationship with somebody there, with somebody's there that lets these folks know that, yo, somebody is going to be asking you some questions about me. You can't just roll however you want to. So if that's having a relationship with the white shirt, if that's having a relationship with the community engagement person, if that's having a relationship with the alderman, the state rep, or whoever, I want to make sure that I have relationships with these people, not only in the moment so I can call out their names, but also relationship because those are the ones that are charged with making sure that the system operates in my best interest. So I'm a vote, of course, but I'm also going to make sure that I'm regularly engaged with these people who are regularly engaged with my life. I'm not a victim of this thing, right? I'm not just somebody that has things happen to me. I make things happen, and I want my young folks to be empowered and know that they can make things happen. but you got to be able to make things happen in terms of process and do things in a way that's going to be not just serve your best interest, but the best interests of others. So be as engaged as you possibly can so that you can make sure that the law works in your benefit as much as possible, and that you can hold others accountable who are in positions to uphold and enforce the law.
Woo, thank you. My sister has had the talk with my nephews, and the one thing she tells them all the time is just live to tell your story in court. That's your goal. Live to tell your story in court. It's not going to happen there. It will not happen when you get pulled over. It will not happen. Just live to tell your story. And so I received that. Thank you.
I mean, all the things, I just want to say this. I know every therapist has talked about deep breathing, like really implement that in the moment. Like breathe deep, right? Inhale, exhale, calm yourself down. You know, do that in the moment. That really will help you release the frustration that you have. And then afterwards, make sure you're talking to somebody. Make sure that you do have safe spaces in your home or at work or in your peer group where you can really, you know, go and fully be yourself, right? Not in a destructive manner, but in a way where you don't always have to feel restricted. I mean, again, what you do in that moment is, like you said, to be able to get to court and have your day. But what you do around that, before and after, is probably more important to how you manage your anger and how you get to the justice that you seek than anything that will happen in that, you know, short period of time where you encounter folks.
Dr. Thomas, you had a question?
Actually, I just wanted to dovetail on that. You mentioned some important words, patience, and then the deep breathing. Because when we get fired up with the emotion, we want to act on it. I'm just reminding us as the child person that, again, the brain and biologically, young people have very little patience. They have very limited ability to delay gratification until I get to that court date. And so a lot of the work that we do with them is, Coach Crawford, is the deep breathing, because they need to learn to put the brakes on when that impulsiveness comes through and not being able to think about, oh, the time will come. So I just wanted to remind us that our young people, even, and I say young, I mean up until 25, learning to delay and to stay alive and protect yourself to the court date, that's an important lesson, but we got to help them because they don't remember in the moment.
Sherry, can I say one other thing, if that's okay? We have to be connected to a community of people that care about us, right? So when you get pulled over, if you know that there's somebody who cares about you and who's connected and knows how to work the system, not necessarily work it in a way where it's, you know, unjust that you're getting over, but somebody who knows who to call it, even if you don't know all that, if you know somebody who knows that, that will give you an ability to be patient in the moment. You know, when I call my father, when I call my uncle, when I call Dr. T or Miss Muhammad, you know, they're going to be able to help me work through this process so I can get to what it is I need to get to. Oftentimes when we feel powerless, that you talked about earlier, it's like, well, why would I chill? Because ain't nothing gonna happen then, ain't nothing gonna happen after this. So I think it's important for adults, you know, to be able to make sure that we create what Carl Bell called the protective shield, right? So that our children know that there's somebody who not only cares about them, but that is actively working to protect them. And as a young person, for my guys, make sure that you get connected to that. Don't be out here just floating around willy-nilly, right? And don't just get with any group that, you know, makes you feel comfortable. Get with groups and get with institutions that can provide you a sense of connectedness and of protection in a way that's going to serve your best interests of your family and of your larger community.
Thank you. Let's switch it up a little. I will ask one question for the group, and anyone who wants to respond can chime in if they want from our panels. First question: what are some reasons for PTSD in our African American communities? So whoever wants to dive in and go first can.
I'll kick it off if that's okay. And my thought is maybe to make this short. We've got like 20 minutes left. And although the police are a tremendous problem, we have been a bigger problem to ourselves than the police have to us. If we look at the rate of homicides in the city, the number of homicides where police are committing a homicide is just a fraction of the homicides where we are the ones killing each other, right? And so we can't adequately deal with the police or any other problem coming from outside of our community until we solve our bigger problem within our own community, right? And so I want us to shift to that focus if we can, right? But just to go back to, to answer the question about PTSD, first of all, it has to do with being exposed to a traumatic event, some type of event that's life-threatening, okay? Now, it's also important to understand that not all people develop what's called PTSD. Other types of problems develop from trauma, right? Depression, anxiety, drug abuse, other problems are related to it, right? But as far as the symptoms, so that we all understand, there are 4 categories. The first category is intrusive symptoms, right? That is re-experiencing the traumatic event over again. Sometimes that happens in your dreams. So a lot of times it happens while you awake, right? It's not having a hard time getting the event off your mind, right? It's feeling physically like you're going through it again, right? The second category is avoidance, right? It's when a person begins to avoid things or people that remind them of the traumatic event that happened. The third category is negative changes in the way a person thinks and feels, right? So one thing that we experience a lot from trauma is serious anger, right? On the thinking end, it's changing the way you think about yourself and your community and your surroundings, right? Things of that nature. The last core category is arousal, right? It has to do with a person's physiological arousal. A lot of times a person has a hard time sleeping, for example, right? There's also something they called hypervigilance, right? Where you always have to be on point because you are expecting danger at any moment, right? So you got to be vigilant, watching what's going on. So you are ready to respond to danger, right? And so those are some of the few highlights. I can turn it over to my colleagues to think more about it. But a lot of those issues come from events that happen between us, right? The numbers of shootings that are occurring right now in our communities, right? Most of that is not coming from the police, right? Right, so all of those events are traumatic. Every time there's another shooting, somebody is traumatized. Many people are traumatized, okay? I'll stop there and let some of my colleagues jump in.
So I want to say that to attach right on to what Dr. T is saying, that whole issue around what Dr. Thomas was saying and what Dr. T is saying and what Coach Crawford talked about, the vicarious trauma is very serious as well. But before I go, when I say vicarious, I'm talking about individuals who, so for example, for Dr. Thomas, it's the children who have seen the trauma, how that changes their brain, how it changes the physiological, biological issues, things in their body, how certain chemicals flood their body and hormones change, and how individuals can begin to show symptoms of what many may start to label them with specific mental health issues, but this is around the trauma that they have experienced. They did a research project or did some research, Northwestern did a couple of years ago, and found that 1/3 of the women on the south side of Chicago, more than 1/3, have PTSD. And this was from issues around sex abuse, domestic violence, molestation, the vicarious trauma that they've seen in the community. And just think about the fact that in our community, we are well-dressed onions. Our resilience has allowed us to show up to work in the community, to mother, to father, to do all of this, and still act as if nothing is bothering us. When in truth, when you think about the ACEs study that they did, all of the things that you are seeing completely impacts your body. And when they have a book that's called The Body Keeps Score, that's around when you see people with high blood pressure, heart issues, cancer, so forth and so on. A part of this can be a complete attachment to and indicative of the things that are happening in our community to us. So everything that is being said here, do understand that everybody on this line, all 60 participants plus the 8 panelists, that because of the things that we do and the work that we do, we have to be very mindful about how trauma impacts us personally, how as a well-dressed onion, you may not be seeking help because who helps the helper, and how we've been so resilient over the hundreds of years. And let me just give a quick example. When my children were younger, and this is small, when my children were younger, in the Black community, you don't say lie. You don't say somebody's lying. You don't do certain things, right? And a part of that was because Black people were not allowed to say lie. If you ask any other culture, you will hear little white children, little Latino children being able to say lie. A part of that was the checking that we had to do to protect ourselves. That, and you pass that on to your children without even understanding the root of it. But we have so many things that we have been told to do and not to do to protect ourselves from trauma, which adds to trauma because there are questions around why can't I? And a part of that is because we really aren't allowed to do that, or we shouldn't do that if we want to be living, or whatever the case may be. So there's so many things, and this trauma thing is very deep. So for everybody that's listening, do understand that what we see on TV every day, the first 15 minutes of the news, you can be vicariously traumatized by listening to the fact that 67 people are shot and 13 killed. That when you're at a picnic and you hear gunshots, or you don't know the difference between fireworks that's happening all day long and gunshots, and you're hypervigilant looking around, or the fact that you have to have an alarm, bars, a dog, a concealed carry, all of that you're carrying all day long as a well-dressed onion, acting as if you're okay. It's okay to not be okay.
Thank you. I'm going to switch to another question, and then we'll probably open it up if anyone else in the audience has questions. But, and this is for anybody on the panel, what do you think makes a person so intent on having the last word that they lose all concept of right or wrong, consequences, self-control, to the point that killing a child, an innocent bystander or grandmother, or just another human being, that doesn't matter? And to that, can this way of dealing with conflict be stopped? And what needs to happen for the ability to choose life over death, so that becomes the first thought, choice, or action?
I know I can answer that one, but I'll let somebody else start if y'all want to.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to the early childhood piece, because that's where my hope lies and my optimism. And it's what you do when you're 15, 16, 17, who we are, personality is a tapestry that is woven over our whole entire life. And it has to do with our relationships. Caretakers, whether it be parents, kids, our communities, that village that everybody keeps talking about, and who we are in that moment, making that choice, whatever the choice is, with the gun, careless, what we're going to do with our anger, is woven and is a culmination of all those relationships over time, the cultural and the values and the beliefs that we have, that become instilled in us from way early on. And a lot of that has to do with what's modeled and what you see. You become what you see, correct? The other part of that is self-love and self-respect is the flips, and empathy are the same thing. And what happens early in life, if you don't develop an identity, a presence, a comfort with your safety and your place in the world, and having a voice in that in the village, or specifically in that home, that caretaking home, whoever those caretakers are, if you don't get that along the line, you're going to be less likely to be empathetic with other people. If you feel helpless and hopeless, why would you care about anybody else's feelings or life? And those are basically two sides of the same coin. So I would say that, and the community can't take that away from you pretty much. If you're bolstered from the time you pop out of your mother's womb to the time that you are confronted with the world, if you feel safe and feel good about yourself, it's natural to feel good about and hopeful about others, and to care and be empathetic about the life of others and have choices for them. So, you know, the answer to that question, what happens in that moment, in my mind, it is a culmination of much of what has gone right or wrong in your environment prior to that. And if you get bolstered early on with mediators of health and well-being, that's going to protect you from all the insults that are going to come to you for the rest of your life, and help and ideally, in the right circumstances, help you make the right choices about other people's lives and their value. How's that?
So just real fast. So, you know, based on where we are now, folks, the answer to the question, Sherry, has to do with safety. How can we get to a place where people feel safe? You know, because if you don't feel safe, that's when people become aggressive, right? And we're talking about young men and groups of young men who have been at war with each other for years, right? So it's just ongoing back and forth, right? Right. But when you don't feel safe, right, and you done already had a bunch of your homies, a bunch of your family members have already been killed. Somebody tried to kill you. You'd have been shot multiple times, right? If you feel like the only way out of that is to be more aggressive than the people you see as your ops, then it continues on and on, right? And so we have to establish safety. And the only way we can establish that safety is these same groups of young men come together to agree that enough is enough. We done lost enough people on both sides. Can we agree to a ceasefire, right, to start things off? And can we work on establishing lasting peace? We absolutely can. We on our way. We need everybody to get on board, but it's really up to our young men and our young women, right, to make this happen. But we have to establish safety, right? So the people who do those things, Sherry, are people, and others who may have asked this question, are people who themselves aren't safe, right? So we have to establish safety.
I think that, you know, and also what is health? What's the life that you want to lead, right? For those of us who may have been involved in, you know, violent confrontations, had our life threatened or threatened another's life. Most of that, some people get a thrill off that, but I think that's a real small percentage. Most people are doing that out of hurt and out of pain and looking to, you know, try to get some type of justice or some get back, or to feel better about themselves, that they moved in a way that honored whoever it is that they may have lost, and to also trying to make sure that don't nobody run up on them again in the future. Outside of the protective piece that you talked about, Dr. T, I think like folks have to be real. People have to be real with themselves about, do you actually feel better after you've taken a particular action? You know what I'm saying? Do you really feel better? Like, not just in the moment, but do you feel better after you done gone back and you done blasted about however many people? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's more trauma and stress that we add to our lives, that as Necole talked about earlier, you know, that now is in our body. You know what I'm saying? And it's impacting the way that we get down and how we move, you know, towards anyone else. So like in the moment, you might be thinking you're doing something good for yourself and for others. But through experience, I know that when you do something that's against your value system, you know what I'm saying? When you do something that goes against your livelihood, and ultimately when you're taking an unhealthy action, you're not going to get a healthy outcome, right? It's not going to be better. So that then begs the question, do you think that it can be better? Do you know how to make it be better? Are there others that you've seen it be better for, right? Do you believe that this new reality that can work better for you and for others is real out here? And if you do, right, and I do, because I done seen it before, and I know as Black folks, we got thousands of years of coming out of bogus situations and creating peace and harmony and doing a whole bunch of stuff. So if I believe that, then I'm gonna work towards it, and I'm gonna act as if, you know, what I believe and see in my mind is a reality now. The question though, Dr. T, like you said, is do we do that on a collective basis, right? Can we plug with others that we are into it with, or that we roll with, where we move as if that's going to be the reality? It's an interesting thing.
Thank you. I'm going to move to questions from the audience. Conway has a question, so I'm going to promote Conway to a panelist and see if we can get him in to ask his question.
Hello. Hey, so I've been like listening for the most part, and I've missed out on a couple small segments, but from, if I'm correct, the question you asked was what would drive a person to like do that type of stuff, and the first response, I got the gist of the responses, like you might trying to be trying to like, what do you say, make sure someone live live on, or you're honoring them, right? So, and like I agree to that for the most part. And then he said the way to solve that is to make sure everyone understands safety. Okay, so like this is one of the main things that I'm pushing in the community right now, that I'm pushing for, is that we learn self-defense. That when it comes to our communities, we're actually very peaceful people. Like I know, like we're often in an oppressed situation. And Fans Phenom wrote a book, In the Wretched of the Earth. They state that a community so impoverished will turn on itself. So I think it comes to like, I'm going to say, of course, finances will be a help, but like I talk to these young men all the time. Like I just did 2 years in jail. Anybody that knows me, that knows like I engage with the youth, you know, like I've been trying to figure this out and see what's to it. And like it seems to be there's a lot of men missing above. Like there's like 3 generations missing above us. This seems to be like the most common result. Like, man, my daddy, my uncle, or my granddaddy, or brother, they either dead in jail or they don't fuck with me, like they deadbeats. So like a lot of these guys got the little man complex, and because they never been taught how to fight, you know. So like it's not like everybody is like, fuck you, you old dude, excuse my language, like we're not gonna listen to you. It's like, yo, what are you gonna do to make me listen to you? So like to talk about like, yeah, we could be peaceful and all of that, but like how do you make them be peaceful? You know, and like I said, the only way for me that I've seen to do it is to put everybody hand to hand. Like we have to start having community groups instead of having a walk or a march every time somebody get killed. We need to be doing that more, like just coming into the communities and showing people like, yo, I'm here. People feel lost. They feel alone. So it's like it goes back to that slave mindset, you know. You know how they, like, if you was on the block and you was getting whipped, and then I come up and try and help you, and now I'm getting whipped. So now I'm taught to know, baby, you got to take care of yourself. Don't worry about nobody else. You can't share, you know, like worry about you. So everybody's isolated now, alone. And so like, yeah, if I feel like I got to deal with this white man and I got to deal with your bullshit, like, bro, what's up? It is what it is. So I mean, just like I said, that's my input on it. And I'm also working on some community gardens right now. I think that they just showed us a prime example that they can cut us off from our resources at any given time. And if that didn't show everybody like what's going on right now, then I don't know what else will. But like I sincerely believe if we start building a community, like literally all of those abandoned lots, them turn those into gardens so people can come and feed themselves if need be. This is what we come from. This is not what they come from. So, you know, so like I said, I've done a little bit of study into our culture, and I think that's what it's going to take to teach everybody self-defense, how to feed themselves, and to know that, like, I'm not against you.
Thank you. Thank you. All very good points. All very good points. I'm going to move to LaVon. LaVon, your hand is raised, so I'm going to promote you to panelist and see if we can get you in to ask your question.
Hello. Could you repeat the question again?
You had your hand raised. Do you have a question?
No, I thought y'all wanted us to feedback on the question that you asked. That wasn't for
Please do.
us.
Mm-hmm. If you have
about the PTSD thing.
Yes.
Well, while I think a lot of people got PTSD, like you said, because of the shootings and all that, but it's really because people didn't have personal interactions with it.
Hey, Levon, your Wi-Fi.
It went bad, so people just always look over. Hello?
I don't think we got the first half of your comment because you broke up a little bit. Can you try that again?
No, I was saying like a lot of people have PTSD because situations that they've been in, like they self, like it ain't because of nobody else or like what's around them. It's all off because like somebody shot at them or they might have got shot or they might have been close to a shooting or anything like that. And it just stick with them because they know, like you said, like a life-threatening situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we are right about at 4 o'clock. So I'm going to do this if we can. I'm going to give our panel the final question, and I'm going to ask for our panel to complete this sentence. I would like to leave this CRED talk today with everyone understanding, and then put what you want everyone to understand. So I will go first. For example, I would like to leave this CRED talk today with everyone understanding that talking to an expert is not weak. It actually shows great strength and self-love. And so, Ms. Mohammed, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Coach Crawford, and then Dr. Thomas, and then we'll wrap with Dr. Chi like we began.
Okay, I want everyone to know and to leave here understanding that women are the queens of the planet Earth, and that, you know, when you violate, mess with, overlook women, you are messing with generations of people, and that there are gifts and talents in every gender. And this is not the 1800s or the early 1900s. Women are capable and able to do everything that everybody else is capable of doing. And that, you know, our women are suffering for a variety of reasons, and those just need to be understood a lot more. When you have women who have children, those children need to be taught and mothered. And if you have a toxic mother or a toxic woman, that is probably the worst thing that you can have, because as they say, happy wife, happy life, that's just a component for marriage. But when you talk about rearing a community, women have always been at the forefront, always been the foundation. And so just make sure that you respect them, understand them, take time to just embrace their gifts and their talents, because we bring a lot to the table.
I want to, you know, lift up Sister Necole for that. You know, women are no less than us. They're no better than us, right? They're our equals. They're our partners. They're our sisters, our mothers, our wives, our friends. You know, our aunties. They are our co-workers. You know what I'm saying? Our co-teachers, our co-learners, right? Educated students. I mean, so I do hope that for all the brothers that's watching this, that, you know, you all can take that and really start to apply that and address a lot of the nonsense that the world has taught us, that has led to the situations that we currently find ourselves living in now. That being said, I hope that you all take away that, you know, what's in my mind is that this is a war, but the battle is inside out, right? So as you work to get yourself in order, you'll have a better opportunity to get your immediate environment in order. And then as that environment extends out, it's hard to, you got to like armor up in the war. So recognize you in a war, armor up, do the things that you need to do for yourself to maintain a sense of health and safety. Do the things that you need for your immediate, family, friends, and peer group. Be a positive influence with them. And then as you do that, as your circle widens with those who are healthy and who are working to maintain a sense of health and a sense of safety, then the world that you exist in, not, the whole planet Earth, but just your neighborhood, I think we will begin to find safer spaces that allow us to be healthy and to maintain and to protect and value and to sustain those things that are most important to us. So, fight inside and out. Deal with you in a loving way, in a healthy way, and deal with those who are closest to you in the same way.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
I think we lost Dr. Thomas.
I think so. Dr. T.
I would like to end with a quote. This is a statement made in 1970 by one of the founders of one of the largest Black gangs here in Chicago. He made this statement, at a time where there was a lot of bloodshed, between his group and other organizations here in the city. So again, this was 1970. And this is what he had to say. He said, "The sweetest and wildest dream of the fathers and mothers, men and women, sisters and brothers in the Black Chicago community is that we settle our differences and truly come together. Our uniting is also the thing that most feared our oppressors. This is obvious from all of the foul schemes our oppressors have used to keep us divided. If we come together, the rest of the Black Chicago community will follow." So we need you, brothers and sisters, to be leaders, continue to be leaders. We here standing next to you, giving everything we can give you to help you be successful, right? So we moving in that direction. Let's keep moving in that direction. This is our time. It's time for us to change this whole city and the whole nation for that matter.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. T. Guys, thank you for joining us today. I know that we lost Dr. Thomas, but we're going to send some information that she wanted everybody to have. You'll get the PowerPoint that we had technical difficulties with earlier. So we'll send that in an email. The one thing I wanted to leave everyone with is that this panel is not just a panel. These are people that we can come to and talk to. And this is our village. And so let's use them. Let's, if we need to talk, if we need to vent, they're here. And so, and they are such jewels that we have. And so let's get healthy. Let's make ourselves better. And I appreciate you all for joining us today on our panel. I appreciate the audience for joining us today. Please stay tuned for next week's CRED Talk. And again, thank you so much and have a great rest of the week and a good weekend. Thank you, everyone.